Marks on Marks. Wes and Walker. We talked with Bobby Marks yesterday. Gave us some enlightening information on the Mark Williams snip, snap situation. Plus, we'll talk about the injury report coming in today against the Orlando Magic, all on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's a couple chuckles this week. I'm feeling good. Real chuckles in the cold open. I'm feeling good about this. That's Doug Branson.
You're catching me off guard. We don't typically go over the cold open. We don't really practice it. I just hear it for the first time. And what I have to stop doing is taking a sip of coffee as you are doing your cold open, because both days been pretty close to a spit take.
My goal is to ruin your equipment. That is my goal before we're done here. That's Doug Branson, everyhornetsboxscore.com, the equipment that allows this podcast to exist. Everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can also find his text information, subtext information. Listen to Locked On NBA, again, with Matt Moore and Hayes. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. You know, all those things I told you Doug was in charge of. Well, he's also in charge of our daily new newsletter, the Locked On Hornets newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free right now, LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Hornets newsletter. You ready for chapter 5, 6 in the Mark Williams saga? Continue rolling here?
I mean, what else are we going to talk about? LaMelo's hurt, Trey Mann's hurt, Grant Williams is hurt, Brandon Miller's hurt. I mean, come on.
All right. Well, we got Marks on Mark. We had Bobby Marks on Wes and Walker yesterday. Huge thank you to his time for, one, doing a great job at breaking this down.
Not to him, but his time.
Yeah, at his time, that's true. Yes, I do appreciate him and his time, but mostly his time. He's doing a great job breaking this down on YouTube, the NBA on ESPN YouTube channel. Plus, you can follow him at Bobby Marks 42 with some of the write-ups that we discuss. But we got to go back and forth on what's going on with Mark. And so, as you know, what we talked about yesterday, Shams reported the Hornets have been in contact with the NBA. They're exploring options to dispute the Lakers' failed physical assessment of center Mark Williams. Sources told ESPN on Monday night the Hornets are considering their next steps and weighing avenues to challenge the Lakers' evaluation process or seek alternative resolutions with the league office. So not exactly sure what they could be getting here, but we led off yesterday with if they have a case. I asked Bobby if the Hornets have a case, if they were to officially, formally challenge the Lakers' failed physical assessment. Here's what Bobby had to say.
They don't, unfortunately. I give a lot of respect to the Hornets and their organization and certainly their ownership group and their front office. I think, I guess if we rewind it a little bit, certainly they feel like they've made a fair trade and they traded a player that is healthy. And, certainly Mark had been playing. So there was, they feel like there was certainly no reason, for the trade to be rescinded and everything like that. And why I say they don't have a case is because the trade was conditional on the players reporting and passing a physical. So the two players, whether it be Dalton Connect and Mark Williams, passing a physical is at the hands of the doctors of the team that acquired you. And if you feel like something showed up and you're not comfortable with, even though the player is still healthy, then you have the right to rescind the trade and to fail the trade here.
Okay. We have another soundbite that I think is important to play on top of this. But, Doug, you made a lot of reactions. What are your thoughts on Bobby telling us that the Hornets don't have a case because this is all subjective and it was conditional on a physical that the Lakers could fail if they wanted to?
Right. And I agree with all of that. And everyone should know that those are the rules of the game. And if you don't know that those are the rules of the game, then you look inexperienced. You look surprised when you shouldn't be surprised. If two teams are going to deal on a player, I feel like before the deal ever gets done, everyone should come to the table and sort of be aware of what's going on with every player, be as open as you possibly can about the injuries, And then that's how these deals typically will move on through and not hit these roadblocks. But I think teams should have wide latitude because it's not just about the player being healthy now. If you're giving up, and again, I always take all of this analysis and I move it from the Lakers to, and I flip it to if the Hornets were in this situation and they were the team giving up the first round pick and they were the team giving up a young asset in Dalton Connect, who was a first round pick for them. If that were the Hornets, I would want them to have a wide latitude to look at a player and say, can this player contribute to me this season? Yes. Can they contribute to me in the next couple of seasons? I'm not so sure. Then, reevaluate the deal if you didn't have that information initially.
Okay, so let's go to the other soundbite because I asked Bobby if there was an accusation from the Lakers towards the Hornets that Charlotte had withheld medical information. And there were some reports out there. I know Brett Siegel of Clutch Points had this out. Whether you put any validity to that, I did not see that on Dave McMenamin's report. I didn't see that from Bobby Marks. And in fact, we got to ask him about any chance that the Hornets withheld medical information. Here's how he answered it.
Yeah, the Hornets didn't withhold information. I guess the release, what they put out on Saturday, was a little bit confusing for people, and certainly like that. The process is it's a pretty simple process. The Lakers have access to all of Mark's medical information. They have access to everything. Once you agree to a trade or you're in the process of making a trade, that you can give that team access, and they had access to everything, every injury, every scan, everything possible. And then it's then as I said, like listen, it's now in the hands of the doctors. When you're basically giving that player a physical, you're X-raying basically every part of their body, and they found out something that they weren't comfortable with, and they made a decision there to rescind the trade.
So, okay, I think with this, the Hornets were not in the wrong at all. Not withholding information, even if there's been some roundabout reporting, suggestive, outright reporting that the Hornets withheld medical information. Let's just get that out of the way because that didn't happen, nor did I really think that happened in the first place. I think what we're starting to lose sight of is, and it's hard to figure out, so it's hard to lose sight of, what is the problem here? The problem is the Hornets feel like the Lakers got cold feet that they manufactured through the ability in using Mark's injury history as camouflage, that they manufactured a couple of other injuries, and they describe it very vague. There is no describing of it. It's not a back issue. We know that, but there's a couple of other issues that we still don't know about. That is the biggest telltale sign to me of, well, we just found a couple of other things that we're real worried about. As long as they don't point to something, now they don't have to have as strong of a defense because they can just say, we didn't like it. They still can. That's well within the rules. And so there's nothing that the Hornets can do because it's still within the rules. I did ask Bobby, too, does this lead to any rule changes? And he talked about maybe we start to pin this down a little bit because of this process. But did the Lakers get cold feet and they manufactured this issue, which is problematic for the Hornets because, one, you're talking about a possible reputation hit where the Hornets have to challenge this just so everybody else knows, nah, man, it's the Lakers tripping. We did everything we could. Don't try to act like we're not going to come to you in good faith with any trade. So there's one. The other is we all understand that Mark Williams' trade value right now, as we've talked about the last couple of days, Mark Williams' trade value is certainly less than what it was getting a Dalton Connect, getting the unprotected first, and getting the pick swap. And so is his trade value so much worse if this thing never happens? The answer to that is no. So I understand why the Hornets are pissed in all of this. This is how I changed my mind a little bit on why they challenged. Yesterday, I thought, man, it just feels like we should move on from this. The goal now should be, how do we get the best from Mark, either as our franchise center going forward or resurrecting trade value so we can get something of value in the offseason, beyond, whatever. But I feel like you can have it both ways here. I think you can challenge because you're pissed at the Lakers for doing what they did, and you can be behind the scenes. Whenever Mark is welcome to talking to, you can be behind the scenes saying, hey, we're doing this for us. We're doing this for our reputation because they're charging us with something that didn't happen. We still do value you. It's just, man, everybody's got a price on their head, and this was your price that we decided to trade you for.
Yeah, I think there's some validity to the idea that the Lakers got cold feet, but I think they were also working within the system that everybody works in, and the way you punish that is by just not dealing with them anymore. And do I think it's realistic that no one's going to deal with the Lakers? No, absolutely not. I've said for many, many years that everyone bails out LeBron James and wherever he is and the Los Angeles Lakers. They both came together in that sense, but they always bail out the Lakers. You saw Nico Harrison doing it with the Luka trade. So I don't, and maybe the Lakers operating from a position of power after that trade. Like, hey, we got the big deal, so this one we can kind of play around with. Maybe that's what happened. My problem with this whole situation is that I think it could have been operated behind the scenes, because if you release the statement where you say, we love Mark, we can't wait to have him back, he's our starting center, and then you go through this process where you're trying to challenge the rescission of a trade, that's where all of this gets loop-de-doop in my head. Whereas I think if you had a problem with the process, if you didn't have a problem with Mark, but you had a problem with the process, to me, that's something that needed to be dealt with in some other fashion. If you wanted to get reform, rule changes, that could have been dealt with this summer. You could have gotten in a room with the Lakers and Adam Silver and figured this thing out. I think the public nature of this is where I have the problem, because now you have Dalton connect with hurt feelings in Los Angeles. You have Mark, who's not even with the team, has not been with the team since the trade went down. They've had some discussions between Charles Lee and Mark. That's all we know. We don't know if Jeff Peterson's spoken to him yet. And he's not with the team. And so all of this is just a disaster, and I hate that it's continuing.
Yeah, I hear you. We can move on. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
Maybe we finish with more Bobby Mark sound and talk about the long injury report coming into this game against the Orlando Magic. We'll get to all of that in the second segment on LOH. This episode is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. You can currently look for furniture. They have a huge selection that makes it easy to find pieces that fit your style and your budget. People's favorite part is the free hassle-free delivery, even for the large items. Wayfair's site was even easy to navigate. You can find everything you need in no time. There's something for every style, every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. And whatever your decor style is, why'd you pick these items? What do you love about them? You can answer all those questions with Wayfair, and you can give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. More Locked On Hornets ahead. You want to get more Bobby sound before the injury report, because we've got some more injury stuff. Do you want to move on from the Mark stuff and get to LaMelo? Talk to me, Doug.
Sure.
Produce the show.
Yeah, no, I love it.
Okay, let's. I gave you two options and you said sure, love it. Which one do you?
The LaMelo stuff. Yeah, no, sorry.
Okay,
I was going with the thing that you landed on last.
Let's go to the LaMelo stuff. So Bobby on ESPN Plus wrote a piece about LaMelo Ball and the fact that LaMelo, yeah, this team gave him $200 million. Yeah, they signed him to a long extension.
That's a fact.
That was the old Hornets. New regime. Rick Slotkin, Gabe Schnall, they didn't do it. They didn't do that with Jeff Peterson. That was Mitch Kupchak and Michael Jordan who ended up doing that. So what do we expect from LaMelo Ball going forward? This is what Bobby Mark said.
It feels like it's a little bit of Groundhog Day every year with him. You've committed a lot of money to him, and he's the face of your franchise, but he's the face of your franchise that can't stay on the court. And that's the reality of it here. And it is interesting because, that, as you said, this is a new ownership group. This is a new front office. This is, they basically inherited, LaMelo. And it's the same thing we went through with Luka, right? Like, anybody, if you think they're the face of the franchise, anybody in this day and age, it's tradable. And you have to figure out in Charlotte, when you evaluate the offseason and figure out what you have with draft picks and, who's returning here, you've got to figure out as far as how he fits in moving forward, because the reality is we might be talking a year from now and there might be a 13th ankle injury or 14th ankle injury here. And it's a hard question. Fortunately, there is some time to still figure that out, but that's going to be the big, certainly the big question for them this offseason.
I mentioned in the question that I asked him that you go to Fox Sports and you look at LaMelo Ball's injury history. I counted, I was right yesterday. The ankle soreness that he left the game with, that was the 10th listed ankle injury that LaMelo has suffered during his NBA career. That is
Double
number
digits.
10. Yeah, we're getting double digits. So thus why Bobby said 13 or 14, because we're only 3 or 4 away from that. And he mentioned the Luka stuff because you are talking about new ownership coming in with Luka, right? That was Mark Cuban who did the whole Luka thing, trading up to go get him. And new ownership comes in, Nico Harrison, no, we're moving on. So what did you make of Bobby's analysis of the LaMelo Ball situation?
Nice Groundhog Day drop in the month of February. Hopefully it's not 6 more weeks of ankle injuries, but we'll see. I get what he's saying with the new ownership group, but it's not the same situation. I just want to, and I don't think he was saying this, but I just want to make it clear. If the Hornets did move on from LaMelo Ball in the offseason or in the next offseason or at the next trade deadline, it would not be the same thing as the Dallas Mavericks moving on from Luka Doncic. You will not have people bringing coffins to Spectrum Center and lamenting and tearing their clothes and gnashing their teeth. And you won't have people getting kicked out of the arena because they are mouthing "Fire Jeff" into the Jumbotron. That's not going to happen because, look, Luka led Dallas to a finals, drugged that team to a finals. He has been all NBA for like 5 straight seasons. None of that you can put on LaMelo. LaMelo hasn't even been to the playoffs. LaMelo doesn't have an All-NBA. He has 1 All-Star appearance in which he got in as an injury replacement. So moving on from LaMelo, those calculations are like way different than that's what made the Dallas thing so shocking. Honestly, at this point, I don't think Hornets fans would be all that shocked. They would be super disappointed. They would be devastated if the Hornets moved on from LaMelo Ball, but they would not be shocked.
No, they wouldn't be shocked. I still think you might sneak in a couple of fire Jeff Peterson signs. There might be 1 or 2 there, but you're right. I don't think we're going to go so far as bringing the coffins because of the injury history. Luka doesn't have that extensive of an injury history. So this is on the table. Like when you're talking about new ownership coming in, who are the guys that are on the roster that are here because of the decisions from ownership and Jeff Peterson? So it's funny because you actually have a little bit more than you think with Jeff Peterson only having been here for more than a year. But Brandon Miller is probably the start of all of this because remember, even if that was the last Michael Jordan selection, they told you they were in contact with new ownership the entire time and what they wanted. And so Schlotkin, they had their hand in the Brandon Miller selection, even if we can give Michael Jordan that last bit of credit and Mitch Kupchak because I think he liked Brandon Miller more too. Schlotkin did as well. So Brandon, I think, is the start of all of it. We have Tijon with Jeff Peterson. We've got the trades of the guys coming in, but the guys coming in is more so for depth. I mean, they just moved on from Vas Samicic. They can move on from that. So what does it mean for this squad to have LaMelo as their franchise guy? What does it mean? Because they did sign Miles Bridges to a longer contract, but it's a descending deal. I asked Bobby about that too. Maybe we can play that another time, but it's like that Miles Bridges contract is going to be something that you evaluate again this offseason. It is going to be interesting how this roster shapes up because as you mentioned, right? Speaking of Luka, everything seems to be on the table. Brandon Miller would be the most surprising piece on the move. And other than that, I could see anything happen with this team.
Yeah, I'm curious how the Hornets view Brandon Miller in the light of, I would say, his struggles early in the season before he was injured, and he's missed a lot of time this season. Like, what's he going to look like this summer? What's he going to look like at the beginning of next season? How big of a jump can he make when he has missed this much game time? I'm curious the answer to all of those questions and how the organization views him. If they view him as the future star of this team, or they view this upcoming draft as an opportunity to get that future star of the team that would make you feel more comfortable, like you weren't starting from absolute, square one by trading LaMelo Ball, because then you could accumulate draft assets. You could even bring back, I think, in a trade, a good player, but this is all about timing, right? What you don't want to do is be New Orleans. New Orleans had to move on from Brandon Ingram because Brandon Ingram wanted an extension, or Miami with Jimmy Butler wanted an extension. Miami did not want to give him one. New Orleans did not. They were scared of giving Brandon Ingram an extension and what it would mean for their books. And so they had to move. They were forced to move on from Brandon Ingram, and they couldn't get the return back that they could have had they done it a year prior, because they kept holding on to this belief that Brandon Ingram was going to get healthy and was going to lead them to playoff success, and it just never happened. And so that's a position you don't want to be in. You want to try to you want to try to make the tough decision. Again, not on a guy who's been, and I want to make the distinction here between the Luka thing. They made that decision way too early on a guy who was a 5-time All-NBA player and someone that got you to a finals. Such a different situation. That's closer, I guess, to the Butler situation, but that had all kinds of other Jimmy Butler stuff. But like, you don't want to hold on until you're at the very last point, and then 4 first rounders turns into 1 first rounder and maybe a pick swap. That's where the Hornets don't want to be.
Yes, and one last thing, since you brought up the draft, the more you think about it, the more this particular draft pick is going to have a huge say in what you do. Now, it gives you a lot of flexibility, to be honest, but one, let's say you get a top 3 pick, you get Cooper Flagg, you get Bailey, whoever that guy is, okay? Now, even if you don't think that this first round pick can be the franchise savior, the Hornets do have the talent that allows you to not need the franchise savior with this first round pick, because you bring this guy in, whoever it is, you put them all on the court as a trio with LaMelo, Brandon Miller, this first rounder. That's a great start. You got 60% of your starting lineup out there that's extremely talented, and at this point would all be top 3 picks. LaMelo number 3, Brandon number 2, this guy 3 through 1 in this hypothetical scenario. So that's a big deal. It's the on-paper stuff, though, because now Brandon Miller will have missed most of his second year. Remember, he even had some injuries before he suffered the big one, the scapholunate. LaMelo, we know what
injury. Tore an ass.
That's right, Matt Geiger style. You have LaMelo Ball, who, enough said with the injury history there, but it is the on-paper stuff that makes you real intrigued. So you get this top pick. It gives you flexibility to move on if you want to, get more picks, or you just have a young trio that becomes the NBA League Pass team this year once again. This draft pick, man, it's going to mean a lot to this team.
Yeah, because look, don't get it twisted. You move on from LaMelo Ball in the offseason, and your team gets considerably worse. Considerably. I mean, you've seen what this team looks like with him on the floor versus him off the floor. You can't say the same thing about Brandon Miller, and I don't care if they draft Cooper Flagg. I don't anticipate the gulf between what they look like with a guy and without a guy to be that vast, even with Cooper Flagg versus LaMelo Ball, because Flagg's still going to have to do what every rookie has to do and figure out the NBA. But the question is, I want to drop some hypotheticals on you. If the Hornets do get the first overall pick, would you be more in favor of them moving on from LaMelo Ball in the right deal this offseason without giving him a chance to come back in the next season stronger, having worked on his body a little bit more, hopefully avoiding the ankle injuries? Would you be more comfortable with that if they had the first overall pick and they were guaranteed to get Cooper Flagg?
No, and I'll tell you why. Next, coming up on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Bees everywhere!
We got one more segment. I will tell you why I would not be more willing to move on from LaMelo if the Hornets got the first overall pick, and then we can preview the Orlando Magic game. That's still to come. LOH. This episode is brought to you by Open Phone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls all day and night, I should say. That was weird. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and your personal life separate. For just $15 a month, the cost of a few coffees, you get complete transparency and visibility into everything everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA for 20% off of 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. More Locked On Hornets ahead. You asked me the question, would I be willing to trade LaMelo Ball even more so if the Hornets get the number 1 overall pick? My answer to that question is no. Here's why. So much of the issue in what LaMelo Ball's injury history is really like comes at the fact that they don't play him on a team that is losing so much. So we don't get a lot of clarity as to if he truly is injured or if the Hornets are still in this full out or even semi-tank mode. If they were a competitive basketball team, is LaMelo just called out as soon as he rolls his ankle where they're just not messing with it? Or do they throw him back in if they're a 500 ball club looking to get to that 6 spot, that 7 spot, or that 8 spot? We just don't know about that yet. LaMelo is the kind of guy that I have more patience with because that's what talent does with these players. The more talent you have, the more patience I'm going to have with your injuries. Now, it doesn't mean that we'll just keep you for 10 years and hope that the 11th year pays off, but we are going to give you a little more patience. Now you're giving me Brandon Miller. You're giving me Cooper Flagg. They fit on the court with one another. Cooper does a lot of the little stuff that makes this real enticing. So now you're talking about defensively, Cooper Flagg is the real deal to me. He can pass. He makes clutch plays. He can dribble a little bit. So now you're talking about 2 secondary ball handlers with Cooper and Brandon. With LaMelo being your primary guy, you're just big and long all over the place. You're 1 through 3. They're all 6'7" or up. You're 1 through 3. So give me a year with LaMelo at the helm, Brandon Miller at the 2, Cooper Flagg, this young promising star at the 3. Let's see if LaMelo has an ankle injury next year, but the Hornets are hovering around 500 or so. How long is LaMelo really out? And is he itching to come back? Are the Hornets itching to put him out there because there's no reason to tank? This is the time. We're here to win right now. All of those reasons are why I'm not more interested in trading LaMelo if the Hornets get the first overall pick.
So I think you make a lot of good points there. And I understand the desire for patience. The problem is that LaMelo Ball so far in his career has spent more time being a patient than being a player.
Oh, great line.
Thank you. And the issue for me is that if you do get the first overall pick and you go into the offseason and you have an opportunity to move LaMelo Ball, maybe it's not for the ultimate package that would come with a player that does have playoff experience, that has won playoff series, but you get a good package for a team that is looking for an upgrade because they're desperate to win. And there will be a few teams like that across the league that are looking to reposition themselves into the next season. If you hold on to LaMelo Ball, and he does, I think in this offseason, you can sell another team on the dream of LaMelo Ball. You can sell them on how well he performed. And I get that the media punished him and not made him an all-star, but he had all-star numbers. I think you can still sell a team on that vision for multiple first-round picks and some kind of player package that would make the Hornets somewhat better. And it would clear opportunities for Brandon Miller and Cooper Flagg to be the offensive focus. Whereas we've seen LaMelo Ball early in the season had the tendency to just suck up all the oxygen. And we defended him because nobody else was shooting the basketball better. But Trey Mann will be healthy. Grant Williams will be healthy. Fingers crossed on both those guys. But you'll have opportunities to be better. If you don't, and he does suffer another ankle injury that is even anywhere close to significant in the first half of next season, I'm just not sure you can sell any team on that vision at that point. And then I think you're stuck with the contract, and then you're hoping that he recovers from that injury and stays healthy until like the final year of his deal. and you maybe get something out of giving him a rental opportunity with another team. That's the danger. And at this point, I'm all about like sort of figuring out where the risk is and how much you want to tolerate that and what's the negative side of this. And I just think the negatives now outweigh the positives. And so, but final thing, I think this changes if they drop in the draft and then you get, you're not guaranteeing an impact player. Mm-hmm. Then I think some of the positives with holding on because he is so impactful to the team, then I think it's a coin flip. Then it's a 50-50 and it's a really tough decision for Jeff Peterson. But if the right deal comes along in the offseason and they have the first overall pick, I don't know that it's a tough decision at all.
This is the most amicable disagreement ever, but I understand all those points. I think you make a lot of good ones too, but here are my final things on this. One, I want a rookie to be set up for success. I think LaMelo does that so well. I think LaMelo, just as a teammate, embraces everybody. Brandon Miller, LaMelo, tight. Miles Bridges, LaMelo, tight. This is someone that plays and gets along very well with his stars. We have zero issues with LaMelo's attitude towards other guys. He doesn't need to have the leadership. He doesn't need to be the guy that, give me the basketball, get out of the way. There is none of that with LaMelo. So I think that's enticing, especially with Cooper not being a primary ball handler. Like, if he can create, that's great, but let's wean him into this and let him learn, while LaMelo can be the guy that sets him up for easy lobs and hopefully gives you 10 dimes a game. So LaMelo setting your rookie up for success, I think, is a big deal. And the other thing is, you are right. Like, you do risk losing value on LaMelo if he gets injured again. But what helps that is, you talk about in this scenario, right? In my scenario, where you keep him another year with this first overall pick, now you're talking about a shorter contract. And it's not like it's going up all that much, especially with more money coming in because of the TV deals and the CBA getting bigger. So you're talking about LaMelo only having 3 more years left on his deal in my potential trade scenario, where you saw what happened. It didn't work out because he got hurt again. Maybe you do sacrifice a first-round pick. There's risk both ways. You trade LaMelo, he balls out with another team. That's a risk. You keep him, he gets injured, you lose a first-round pick on the package. That's a risk. I could see the argument for both sides. I have visions of LaMelo kicking out to Brandon Miller, and then when the defense pays attention to Brandon, just throwing a lob to Cooper Flagg. I have visions of that trio, and I want to see that through, even if it means losing a first-round pick and a potential trade for LaMelo. And you're probably right, it does, but I want to see that vision through because I'm a sick bastard.
And anyone, you want to throw your comment in there on YouTube and let us know what you think. I understand that idea.
Yeah.
But we praise Bob Bass because he made the tough calls on players that I think you would look at that time and go, wait a minute, they still had stuff left to give to this franchise. Alonzo Mourning couldn't be helped. He did the best they could in that situation. But LJ
Zoe kind of forced it, right? Like, we know about the Zoe, we know about
that's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. He couldn't.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. He couldn't help. He just got the best out of that situation.
Gotcha.
But LJ was one of the ones where he made the tough call, and
yeah.
So we praise that. And so I think if that's what it came down to in the offseason, I would be disappointed because of everything that I thought the Hornets could achieve with LaMelo Ball at the helm. And to be honest, you and I would be having an entirely different discussion if they had gone to one single playoff series. Certainly if they had won a playoff series. I mean, you look at Sacramento and the tough call that they had to make with De'Aaron Fox when he forced his way out. Like, that's a tough decision because De'Aaron Fox actually helped them do things in the postseason. It wasn't all they wanted, certainly, but it was something you could hold on to. We just haven't had that, and his ankles have been partially responsible for that.
All right, and speaking of ankles, let's get to the injury report before we end today's episode. Injury report, it's a long one. LaMelo Ball with the ankle, Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, Josh Okogie, Grant Williams. Those are the guys on the last line of the Hornets PR tweets because they're going to be out, and they're going to be out for a while, if not all season long. The other names on the list, Isaiah Wong is probable with a right foot injury. Moussa Diabate with that right eye abrasion. He's questionable, so Moussa Diabate could suit up. Not a great designation. Going to be tough for Moussa possibly to get out there. There's no Mark, so Nurkic think we're going to see Nurkic tonight make his debut.
Did you see him putting up threes in practice? He was knocking them down, baby. That's my stuff. Inject it right into my veins. Let's go.
So Nurkic, it's funny because the reports are that he's going to get limited minutes. They're not going to just throw him out there and give him 30. But if you don't have Musa, you clearly don't have Mark. Is it going to be a lot of Daquan Jeffries and Nurkic? Doug, they don't have any other option but shooting big man at this point. Like, it's Jeffries and it's Nurkic. Like, who else are you going to play down there? Tijon can shoot a little bit too, or at least he attempts them. So it's a bunch of shooting big guys out there for you.
Yeah, tonight against the Magic, it's not impossible. It's very improbable that they could get a win here, but Orlando is not playing very well. I think they're 2-5 over the last 2 weeks. Their offense is absolutely miserable. The problem is Charlotte's offense is even worse. But, of course, defensively, Orlando was at the top of the league most of the season. But, again, even though they've gotten Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner back from some longer-term injuries, their defense is now middle of the road. Their offense is still as miserable as it's always been. I think Jalen Suggs is doubtful. That's going to make it worse because Jalen Suggs is one of the few guys that can shoot from outside. So if, 5 or 6 of their guys struggle to shoot the basketball, the Hornets will have an opportunity, particularly with these young guys who are playing tough. They're playing hard. If Musa goes, I give them, I'll say, a 35% chance to win this game, and that's pretty high.
Oh, that is high.
What they've gone
look at
through.
you. Yeah, you're a sick bastard too. Look at that 35%. I'm ready for it. All right, that'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Again, we're free and available anywhere you get your pods. That includes YouTube. You can see a Locked On East breakdown. You can see Tony East. You can see Sean Woodley.
Man.
I know. I wanted to talk about it a little bit. I did. I wanted to talk about it. Good on you for defending LaMelo's All-Star chances. Yeah. I've got takes on it because I love Tony East, man. That's my Indiana brother. I love Tony. He's been doing this for a while. Sean Woodley at the same time. Like, it's just disappointing because they're smart. Like, these guys are really smart dudes, and yet still there's this overwhelming dismissal of LaMelo, and they're smart guys. It's just. And I'm not watching Pacers games. I'm not watching Raptors games, right. So I'm not even blaming them. But that's also why I don't have such a staunch opinion on Tyrese Halliburton's All-Star chances and whoever, Scotty Barnes's All-Star chances. I love these guys, but it's like, man, the overwhelming dismissal. The case for Trae Young is the case for LaMelo. But we're, what I'm saying?
Except, and this is what it comes down to. Atlanta has won some ball games. Trae has played in more ball games, and Trae has previous playoff success that people can lean back. People that don't watch the Hawks this season, they can lean back on that. That you can. There's nothing for. And again, that's why I put that on. I actually leaned back in my chair.
You just fat Joed it. I just want people to know that are only listening to this pod. Go on.
But that's the deal. Like, if you're listening to this podcast, maybe you're an NBA sicko too, so maybe you know this. But Tyrese Halliburton, we all were ready to claim him as a star, maybe even a superstar. He's had a really weird season in which, some games he'll take 13 shots, 17 shots, and some games he'll take 6. And they've lost those games in which he's been so passive. He's been all over the place. And at the root of Indiana's inconsistency has been Tyrese Halliburton. But guess what? You probably didn't know that because you're not watching Indiana Pacers games and they're not on national TV all the time. And so you wouldn't know that. And so that's why I'm saying with the LaMelo stuff, part of this is on the organization for not getting him more help. Part of this is on LaMelo for not being more available. Part of this is on the league for not taking care of some of these smaller franchises and giving them a bone or two across the regular season to get them one stinking national TV game. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. So many factors play into this. Ultimately, if you win, you're in. And that's just like the bottom line. But they weren't ready. That East squad, they were not ready for my passion. It was so funny. I would go on these tirades and then there would just be this silence
well, they'd move on. Okay. They'd squeeze you out. There was a long pause, which there's a lot of people fighting for airtime during those shows, but there was a long time. I kept scrolling and scrolling and scrolling to find when Doug was talking, and I could not see your mouth moving at all for a 10-minute process, seemingly so. But you're still there. Yeah. The other thing is, if we should not be using all-star appearances in as historical context to rate these players, well, then it is a fan event, right? Like if
Right.
there's the right. So like it just felt helter-skelter.
Honestly, we shouldn't.
But
Maybe
those
we
shows are
should
fun.
have before. It made sense for a different generation.
Right.
For this generation, it doesn't make sense anymore. I don't think it should be tied to contracts. I don't think it should be tied to supermaxes. I don't think it should be tied to how we view them in our legacy. I think the players have given up on the All-Star game meaning anything. I think all NBA. That's where all NBA
Totally
is
agree.
where we just turn our attention to your legacy, who you are, where you rank in terms of players. All-Star should be, Globetrotters level of like, let's go out and eat some popcorn, have a good time.
No, I agree with you, and I agree with Sean, who mentioned we shouldn't be using all-star appearances as historical context to measure players. But also, if that's the case, then who is this for then? For the players? Because if it, okay. All right. Anyways, I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. Have a great day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.